So now I'm going to go over outlining, and I'm going to start with the practice outline that I put together for just kind of a rough outline, just to kind of help people to understand what needs to go into a speech, just any speech. And then it also gives you a practice so that when it comes to time where you have to put together an outline, so for some of my classes, that's the persuasive outline that they do in week 3. For other classes, it's different. But when you come to do that outline, if you've already done this practice outline, it makes things a little easier for you. So I'm going to show you the practice outline. I'm going to show you a formal informative outline, which doesn't come into play in most of my classes, but it does kind of give you an idea of what's expected from any speech. So I'll show that to you. And then I'll go through very briefly the motivated sequence, which is the outline that we use for motivational speeches, which is for the most part the persuasive speech that we do in week 4. So let's start with the screenshot of the informative outline. There is a formal outline, and this is a very basic outline, and it's what we use for informative speeches. So this could be used for your demonstration speech, or it could be used just to provide information to an audience. And the good thing about this outline is that it just shows you everything that you need in your speech. We don't use this outline anymore because I simplified the class quite a bit, so you don't have to do this outline, so lucky you. But I am going to walk you through it just to show you where things go and why they're in there. So the purpose of an outline is to help you organize your speech. It kind of brings together everything you need in your speech, and it puts it in the right place. By following an outline, by building your outline first and then giving your speech, you know that you're providing the audience with everything they need and nothing more. It helps you to fit within the time parameters that you have, and it gives a good flow so you don't kind of go off topic at any point, or you don't introduce something without giving any kind of lead into that topic. So it doesn't confuse your audience. You want to provide a good flow because that helps them to follow your speech, and it helps them to focus on each point rather than getting stuck on one point and missing the next point. Because if they get confused, then they're going to get stuck at a certain point and they won't follow along with you. So this helps them to have a good flow. It'll help them to remember the things that you are presenting, and it'll help them to understand it easily. So this outline is not in APA format. It's just a standard outline. If it was in formal APA format, then you would have a title page, you would have an abstract, but I just want to go through the outline rather than the APA format. I'll cover that in a minute. So in your introduction, you have a greeting. This is where you say, "My name is," and then you have an attention getter. These two things, they can be switched around. So you can start with your attention getter, which is the thing that grabs the audience's attention. So you might use a statistic that's really shocking, or you might tell them a funny story, or you might use a quote, something that is going to suck the audience in. And a lot of the time, if you watch professional speeches, they start with their attention getter and then they use their greeting. I like it that way because you grab the audience's attention right from the get-go and then you tell them who you are. So it's up to you. You can switch these things around, but you have to have a greeting and you have your attention getter. Then you have your credibility statement. Your credibility statement tells the audience how you are qualified to speak on this subject. So either, if you're speaking about a pre-flight plan, for example, you could say, "I've been flying for this organization for 5 years," or "I've been flying for a total of 20 years, I've been a pilot, I've been an engineer," whatever it is. Tell them how you're qualified to speak on this subject. And if you don't have specific qualifications that you can call out, you can always say that you've done a lot of research. This topic fascinates me, and I have done a lot of research. And so today I'd like to talk to you about this topic, and I'll present you the research that I have found interesting. Your thesis statement, sometimes this kind of comes with your preview. So your thesis statement is, what is the purpose of your speech? Why are you giving this speech? Where is it going? You need to tell the audience that, because if they don't know what they're in for, then chances are they're just going to switch off. And we, as a human race at this point, because we are so busy, and not necessarily busy, but we think we're so busy because we've got all of these voices talking to us, our phones, our computers, we got Facebook and Twitter, and everybody wants our attention. So these days, you have to tell people where you're going. What's your point? Otherwise, they're just going to switch off. And the reason that your thesis statement sometimes comes with your preview is because your preview tells the audience where you're going, what you're going to tell them today. So when we look at an outline, we can basically break it into three parts: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In the introduction, you're going to tell the audience where you're going, what you're about to tell them. In the body, you tell them. And then in the conclusion, you tell them what you just told them. And when you're putting this together, it could seem really repetitive to you. It sounds like you're just saying the same thing over and over, especially when you come to practice and then you start practicing the same thing over and over. But for your audience, it's not repetitive. They haven't heard your speech 1,000 times. They're only hearing it one time. So this helps them to remember what you're saying, what you're talking about. They know where they're going, so they feel very comfortable just sitting back and listening to you. And it helps them to retain the information. So when they walk away, they don't just say, what was that guy talking about again? They remember exactly what you were talking about, and they remember probably most of your main points. So your introduction is your greeting, your attention getter, your credibility statement, thesis, and preview. You can switch things around a little bit, but you do want to end with your preview. The next thing that you go into is your body. But as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see my screen, my arrow moving around where it says transition, but you have a transition, and your transitions are what take the audience, they help them move from one point to another. And it can be a full sentence, or it could be something as simple as, so let's get started. So it could just be like a phrase or a full sentence. It's something that leads people from your introduction to your body. So it kind of gives them, it's like a signpost, it kind of tells them where we're going next. So then we move into our body. Your body has three main points. This is for any informative speech. For your persuasive speeches, it's a little different. For motivational speeches, it's a little different. But this is for most speeches that are informative. And if you're giving any kind of sales presentation or speech about, something that you're selling, or if you're giving really any speech and you don't know where to go to kind of organize your thoughts, you can always use this outline. So it may not be the most persuasive outline, but it is your basic outline. It covers everything that you need. So you have three main points in your body. And the reason you have three is because if you had any less, you wouldn't fill the time. You wouldn't be able to give enough information for them to walk away feeling knowledgeable on the topic. And if you have any more, you're going to overwhelm your audience. So we break it into three main points. So in a minute, once I've gone through each of the elements within the outline, I'll tell you the order to use to put them together. Okay? So you have three main points. You talk about, you list what your main point is. So first I'd like to talk about the bicycle itself, and you start going over the elements within your bicycle. That would be breaking it down into subordinate points would be, these are the wheels do blah, blah, blah. This is the handlebars. So those are your subordinate points. And within those subordinate points, that's where you put in your research. Here it's called evidential support. That's your research. So as you can see, they've got a whole lot of research in here. You don't have to have this much, but if you do collect a lot of research, this is where you would put it in. So you, the primary source, would say, to remove the wheels of a bicycle, you might need to remove them to do such and such. For example, when Lance Armstrong was in the Tour de France, he removed his wheels for such and such, according to my evidential support. So that's how you place your sources within your speech. You spread them out and you do not put them all in one spot, and you make sure that they are relevant to your point. So you make the point and then you back it up with research. So within the body you can see there's a transition and then there's your internal summary. Internal summary is just kind of summarizing what you've said so far to kind of help the audience to follow along. And from your body, then you move into your conclusion. So you signal closing. Say something like, I hope that you have gathered enough information that you feel comfortable now tuning up your own bicycle. And that signal of that closing, I already really restated my thesis there. So I don't want to say it again. You can move these things together and put them together. But if for some reason in your closing you don't say what your purpose was for this speech, then restate what your purpose was. So then you go through your main points. So just to clarify and remind you, today we talked about all of the elements of the bicycle. We talked about how to do the basic tune-up, and then we covered what's really necessary for your annual tune-up. Then give them some call to action, which is, or a memorable statement, which is usually the best way to do this is to try to wrap it up. So if you started with a quote in your attention getter, try to do a quote at the end, because that tells the audience that it is neatly wrapped up in this pretty little package. And it makes you feel and seem so much more organized if you can refer back to your introduction. So you could do that, you could end with a statistic, or you could say something as sweet as, I would love to be able to ride with all of you guys. If you're interested, we ride in Dallas on Tuesdays at whatever. Something like that, okay? So that is your basic speech outline. Now, I said that I was going to tell you about how to put the outline together. What I mean by that is, you would think, looking at this, that you would simply start with your greeting, like delete this and put in your greeting, what you would say for a greeting. But you're not going to start there. The funny thing is, you're going to start with your main points. You need to figure out what you're going to say for each of your main points. So if you wanted to do this, you could simply delete this and put in your main point. And the order that you want to put your main points in is the most important point that you want to make would be the one you end with. So main point 3 should be your most important point so that your audience remembers it. Your second most important point will be main point number 1. And then your third main point, or your third most important main point, or your least important point, would be main point number 2. Because people tend to remember the beginning and the end. They don't tend to remember as well the main point in the middle. So when you start planning out your outline, figure out what you want to say, think about how you're going to break that into 3, and put number 1 main point as C. So your most important goes last, your second most important goes first, and your least important goes second. I hope I got that right. I confused myself a little bit. So you end with the most important, you begin with the second important, and you have the middle as your least important point. Okay? So then fill in these main points. Figure out what you're going to say and what research you're going to use in each point. Once you've done that, go back to your introduction and fill out the introduction. The reason we don't start with the introduction is because you could say something in the introduction and then you start filling out the body and you realize, oh, I should talk about this. And all of a sudden your introduction doesn't match the body. So do the body first, then the introduction, then the conclusion, and then go back, and the final thing you do is your transitions. Okay? So this is your basic speech outline, good for basically any speech. What I have given you, let's go back over here, is what I did was I took that basic speech outline and I tried to make it even easier for you. So just so that you can kind of get a feel for it and so that you can practice, so that when you move to your outline week where you have to do an outline, you feel like you're ready. You know how to do this. So you open this up in PowerPoint, and as you can see, it says click here to fill in your bullet points. So you just click there and you can write it in. So the first thing to do when writing an outline is to craft your attention getter. So we put all of the information in here. This is your introduction, then we put the body, and then we put the conclusion. The way that I've laid this out means that when you read this, you would automatically fill in your introduction first. I just did that for simplicity's sake. Now that I've already told you that the best place to start is your body, you can start with the body. So I would recommend you start with the body, go to the introduction, and then do your conclusion. It's really simple to fill this out. The the pieces that I wrote in here for you, like the prompts, make it really simple. This is super, super basic, but it gives you a good practice, okay? One of the things that I didn't mention when we were looking at the last outline is that you should be writing in full sentences. These are full sentence, formal outlines. Full sentence, formal outlines. So that means you put in a full sentence, not everything you're going to say. You're not going to read from your outline. You're just using it as a prompt, okay? And it helps because, let's say, you were going to do this speech. I'll go back to my bike speech. You were going to do that bike speech, and one day, or the day before your speech was due, you fall ill and you can't do the speech. You can still submit the outline to me, and I might be able to do your speech for you because I see what is in your outline. I should know how to do the speech based on your outline. I'm not going to do it exactly the way you would do it. I wouldn't do it word for word, but I know where you're going. I know what the premise is. I know the idea. I know the flow. So I should be able to fill in the blanks for you. That's the hope for when somebody sees your outline. Okay, so I've gone through the basic speech outline. I've gone through our practice outline. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the motivational speech outline. This is Monroe's motivational speech outline. And this is in APA format. So as you can see, when we talk about APA format, you have a title page. This is the exact layout as it should be. The next page is your abstract, where you have 1-2 sentences that basically summarize what you're going to say in the paper, or in this case, the outline. And then we move to the outline. So I'm going to change my view here so that you just see one page. Let's see if I can do that. Here we go. Okay, so going back, we have our title page, our abstract, and then we jump to the outline. So at the top of this outline, this is information for somebody reading the outline. This is not, sorry about that. This is not information for that will be conveyed in your speech, just for your reader. So the difference with Monroe's motivated sequence is that you're trying specifically to persuade people. And I recommend you watch my lecture video about motivational speeches or persuasive speeches, because it tells you how we go about doing that. It's really interesting. We don't want to take people from believing A and automatically presume that at the end of our speech we are going to persuade them to believe Z. It doesn't work like that. You really aim for more the people in the middle. So you might be aiming for the people who are L people to get to maybe Q, something like that. You're trying to push them towards your goal, but you're not going to get them all the way. You're just trying to plant a seed in their brain and maybe make them take the first step. So in your introduction this time, instead of having all of the things that I laid out in your previous introduction, what you do is you grab their attention. We call this the attention step. So it's very similar to the last introduction, right? And in the attention step, you do have your attention getter, you have your credibility statement, you have your preview, then you can see you have your transition. Once you have their attention, you tell them that there is a problem. There's a need that they need to fulfill. There is some kind of problem. That's the need step. Lay out what the problem is very specifically. Then you tell them in step number 3 how to satisfy that need. So what we would do is to fix this problem, we do such and such. You lay it out for them. And again, see how we have our sources throughout the speech, not just bulked in one spot. So that's our satisfaction step. Once you've told them that there's a problem, you grab their attention, you told them there's a problem, you told them how we can fix that problem, and then what you do is you give them a picture. You let them visualize, this is how life would be if we solve the problem. Imagine. It's almost always going to start with imagine. So it's either imagine yourself, or imagine a world, or imagine your kids, or something like that. Imagine. You want them to think about what the world will look like if they fix the problem that you've laid out. I apologize for these pingings. And then in your conclusion, you give them the action. Okay, so now they know there's a problem. You grab their attention. You told them there's a problem. You told them how we as a whole can solve this problem. You told them what it would look like and how great the world would be if we solved this problem. Now you give them a call to action. This is something that you will see in all kinds of marketing. You have to tell people what to do with the information. Now that they've got the information, what do you want them to do? And here's a little hint. This is a psychological issue that we all have. If you can get somebody to take any step towards your goal, once you've told them of any kind of thing that they can do and made them or persuaded them to take that first step, no matter how small it is, once they're on board, they are on board. They are now loyal. They have skin in the game. They are going to see it through, whatever you want to say. So imagine yourself on a stage giving this speech. When you come to the end of your speech, you do not want people to leave the room until they have taken some kind of action. And most likely you're trying to persuade them of something that they need to do outside of the room. So the first thing that you do before they leave the room is get them to make some movement towards that final action. So, example of this. So today I've spoken to you about adopting from your local shelter rather than buying from a puppy mill. And I hope that I have given you all of the information that will make you consider your next pet adoption very carefully. Before you leave today, I would just love to see a raise of hands of those people that understand that you can get a purebred dog from a dog shelter, from a pet shelter. And then people will raise their hands, and by raising their hands, they've taken that first step. They're on board now. That's it. That's all you needed to get them to do. Get them to make some effort before they leave the room. Ask them to sign a petition. Ask them to take the address of your local congressman. Ask them to do something. Whatever it is, you've got to get them to do something simple before they leave the room. So let me give you an example of something that is taking it way too far. Let's say I was doing a speech, a persuasive speech, about how people should use cash or carry cash with them instead of using their credit card. When they come to leave the room, obviously, to put this into effect, they would need to carry cash, right? And it would work better if they didn't even have a credit card in their wallet. So if I ask them, before you leave the room, we're going to hand around a pair of scissors for every person in this room, and I would really love it if you would take out your wallet, take out your credit cards, and just cut them up before you leave. Now, people are going to look at me like I'm crazy. No one is going to cut up their credit card right in front of me without any warning or without any, they haven't done anything to set up their life. They haven't got cash out. So that would be taking it too far. The action step has to be something that they can put into action immediately, and it has to be something that is simple, something that doesn't ask too much of them. Because if I ask too much of them, if I ask them to take out their credit cards and cut them up right in front of me, not only are they not going to do that, but they're probably going to disbelieve what I just said in my 6 minutes of speaking. So that's not good for me. I don't want them to do that. So make sure that you ask them to do something, leave them with something that they need to do, and make sure it's something simple. Okay? So we've gone through 3 different kinds of outlines. Hopefully you now know when you're supposed to use each one and what the purpose of the outline is, and also how to use them, what to fill it in with. All right, so I look forward to seeing your outlines, and I hope that this video helped. Thank you.